The biggest mistake an ambitious person makes isn't doing too little. It's trying to do everything, trying to answer everything, fix everything, say yes to everything, start everything, carry everything. And at first, it feels like strength. It feels like discipline. It feels like responsibility. It feels like you're doing what it takes to win. But over time, something strange happens. You work more and move forward less. You stay busy and feel more lost. You end the day exhausted, but without that deep sense of real progress. And maybe this is the most dangerous part. Your life can be full of movement, but empty of direction. In this video, you'll understand why high achievers don't win because they do more things. They win because they know what needs to be done first. There is one thing that once you find it, begins to organize your mind, simplify your decisions, and pull your life to another level. But as long as you keep trying to do everything, your energy will stay scattered, your attention will stay divided, and your future will keep being delayed by things that feel urgent, but are not essential. So stay with me until the end, because throughout this video, you'll learn how to stop wasting your life in 1,000 directions and start building real results around the one thing that truly matters. The lie you believed about productivity. You've been trained to believe that being productive means doing more. More tasks, more commitments, more responses, more effort. The fuller your day looks, the more you feel like you're on the right path. But that's not productivity. That's organized distraction. Because there's a brutal difference between being busy and actually moving forward. And most people never realize it. They wake up, check their phone, reply to messages, solve problems, run from one thing to the next. And at the end of the day, they feel like they've done their part. But when you look at their lives, nothing has changed. Their income hasn't grown. Their mind is still cluttered. Their results are still average. And this happens because they're trapped in a dangerous illusion. The idea that the amount of effort creates the quality of the result. But it doesn't. If it did, the busiest people in the world would also be the richest, the freest, and the most fulfilled. And you know that's not true. The truth is, the more you try to do everything, the less energy you have to do what actually matters. Your attention starts to fragment. Your mind becomes overloaded. And you enter a cycle where everything feels urgent, but nothing is essential. And this is where the real problem begins. Because when everything feels important, you lose the ability to recognize what actually has the power to change your life. And without that clarity, you can work for years without ever moving forward. That's why high achievers are not the ones who do more. They are the ones who eliminate more. They understand something most people ignore. Every yes to something irrelevant is a silent no to something that could transform your life. And as long as you keep trying to handle everything, you'll keep living divided. Half your energy in things that don't matter. Half your attention in directions that lead nowhere. And that is exactly what keeps so many people busy, tired, and stuck. In the next part, you'll understand something even deeper. Your brain was never designed to handle this level of distraction. And that changes everything. Your brain wasn't designed to do everything. There is an invisible limit you've been ignoring. And no matter how hard you try, you can't push past it because it's not a lack of discipline. It's biology. Your brain was not designed to handle dozens of important decisions at the same time. It wasn't designed to constantly switch focus. And it definitely wasn't designed to live in a continuous state of stimulation. But that's exactly how most people live today. Notifications all the time. Messages coming in nonstop. New demands appearing every minute. And in the middle of all that, you try to focus. You try to produce. You try to think clearly. But the more you switch between tasks, the more you lose depth. Because every time you change your focus, A part of your attention stays stuck on the previous task, and that builds up. Your mind starts to feel fragmented, tired, slower. And the most dangerous part is that you don't notice it right away. You think you're being efficient. You think you're handling everything. But in reality, your ability to think clearly is being drained, and that comes at a cost. You start making weaker decisions. You begin to procrastinate on what truly matters. You avoid what requires deeper focus, and without realizing it, you enter a silent downward cycle. Less focus, less clarity, less results. So you try to compensate by doing more tasks, more effort, more hours. But that only makes the problem worse. Because what's holding you back is not a lack of action. It's an excess of direction. Your mind is being pulled in too many directions at once. And no mind works well like that. High achievers understand this early. They don't try to use more force. They protect their focus. They reduce stimulation. They eliminate unnecessary decisions. They create mental space. Because they know clarity is never born in chaos. Clarity is born in silence, in space, and in singular direction. And when you finally understand this, something shifts. You stop fighting your own mind and start working with it. In the next part, you'll discover a simple but extremely powerful question that can completely reorganize your life. The question that reorganizes your life. There is a question. Simple on the surface, but extremely powerful in practice. A question that, if you truly understand it, has the power to completely reorganize your life. Not tomorrow, not years from now, but starting now. That question is, what is the one thing I can do? Such that by doing it, everything else becomes easier or even unnecessary. It sounds simple, but it isn't, because this question directly challenges the way you've been conditioned to live. You've been taught to make long to-do lists, to handle everything, to respond to every demand, to stay useful all the time. But this question does the opposite. It eliminates, it cuts, it forces you to choose. And that's exactly why it works. Because success is not about doing more things. It's about doing the right thing, at the right time, with full focus. And this question creates a filter, a brutal filter. Everything that doesn't pass through it is distraction, even if it looks important, even if it feels urgent, even if everyone else is doing it. If it doesn't directly contribute to what actually moves your life forward, it is not a priority. And that changes everything, because for the first time, you stop reacting to life and start directing it. But here's the part most people ignore. This question is not something you answer once. It has to be asked constantly, every day, in every area of your life, in your finances. What is the one thing I can do today that could increase my income or create a new source of money? In your career, what is the one action that truly moves me toward the next level? In your mind, what is the one shift that can bring more clarity, focus, and control? And when you begin to live this way, something powerful happens. Your decisions become simpler. Your mind becomes lighter. Your energy stops being wasted and starts being directed. And that creates something few people ever experience. Real progress. Not the illusion of progress from doing 1,000 things while staying in the same place, but the quiet, consistent progress. That, over time, completely changes your standard of living. And that's why high achievers seem to move faster. Not because they do more, but because they do what matters, with intensity. While most people try to balance everything, they concentrate everything. While most people divide their attention, they go deeper. And that creates an advantage that compounds over time. But there's an important detail. Knowing the question doesn't mean you'll have the courage to answer it honestly. Because many times, the answer will require you to let go of things, projects, habits, commitments, even people. And this is where most people fail, because choosing one thing means walking away from many others. But that's the trade. Clarity requires sacrifice. Focus requires decision, and progress requires direction. In the next part, you'll understand how this idea turns into something even more powerful. An invisible effect that makes small actions create massive results over time. This is where everything starts to connect. The domino effect. How small actions change everything. There is a silent principle behind almost every great result. But very few people actually see it, because they're too busy trying to do everything instead of doing the right thing. This principle is known as the domino effect. Imagine a row of dominoes, small pieces, seemingly insignificant. But when the first one falls, it creates a chain reaction that knocks down the next, and the next, and the next. What starts small ends up becoming something big. Now apply that to your life. There is one action, one single action, that, when executed consistently, starts to trigger a sequence of results. Results you could never achieve by trying to do everything at once. This is what most people don't understand. Success doesn't come from scattered effort. It comes from directed effort, repeated, compounded over time. But here's the problem. People want big results without respecting the small process. They want to change their life quickly, but ignore the small actions that actually build that change. So they jump from strategy to strategy, from idea to idea, from plan to plan, with no consistency, no depth, no time for the domino effect to take place. And without that, nothing grows. Because the real power is not in intensity for a moment. It's in strategic repetition. It's doing the right thing, even when it feels small, even when it brings no immediate result, even when no one is watching. Because every time you execute your one thing, you are pushing the first domino. And in the beginning, it might feel like nothing is happening, no visible results, no dramatic change. And this is exactly where most people quit, because they've been conditioned to expect immediate rewards. But high achievers think differently. They understand that the first domino doesn't need to be big. It just needs to be in the right direction. Because over time, each domino knocks down another one, slightly bigger. And then growth stops being linear and starts becoming exponential. And that's when everything changes. What once felt slow starts to accelerate. What once felt small starts to create impact. And what once felt impossible starts to become inevitable. But this only happens for those who respect the process, for those who choose a direction and stay with it, for those who stop trying to do everything and start doing what actually matters every single day, without interruption, without distraction, without negotiating with their own discipline. And this is where most people fail, because it's easy to start. What's hard is continuing when the results haven't shown up yet. But it's exactly in that invisible phase that the domino effect is being built. And once it starts, nothing can stop it. In the next part, you'll understand why, even knowing all of this, most people still can't apply this principle. And the answer might be uncomfortable. Why you can't stop trying to do everything if all of this is so clear. Why do you still try to do everything? Why, even knowing that focus is the path? Do you keep dividing your attention? The answer isn't a lack of information. It's your behavior. And even deeper than that, your invisible patterns. Because trying to do everything is not just a strategic mistake. It's an addiction, a silent addiction. That makes you feel productive, even when you're not making progress. And every addiction has a reward. In your case, the reward is the feeling of being in control. When you respond to everything, fix everything, say yes to everything, you feel like you're in charge. But that's an illusion, because in reality, the more you try to control everything, the more you lose control over what actually matters. And there's something even deeper behind this. Fear. Fear of missing out. Fear of falling behind. Fear of making the wrong choice. So instead of choosing one direction, you try to keep all of them open. You start multiple projects. Take on multiple responsibilities. Say yes to almost everything. Because somehow that feels safer. But it's not. That's not safety. That's dispersion. And dispersion has never built anything meaningful. Another force that keeps you stuck in this cycle is the need for validation. Being busy has become a status symbol. People admire those who are always doing something, always moving, always out of time. And without realizing it, you start tying your self-worth to how busy you are. But high achievers don't think like that. They don't want to look busy. They want to be effective. And that requires something most people avoid, saying no. No to irrelevant opportunities. No to distractions disguised as urgency. No to external expectations that don't move your life forward. And that's uncomfortable. Because saying no creates friction. It invites judgment. It creates the feeling that you're leaving something behind. But here's the truth. You are already leaving something behind. Every time you say yes to what doesn't matter. The difference is, most of the time, you're leaving behind the very thing that could change your life. And that's why this cycle continues. You try to do everything. You feel productive, but you make no real progress. So you try to compensate by doing even more until you burn out, until you lose clarity, until you reach that point where you're busy all the time, but completely lost. And if you don't break this pattern, nothing changes. Because the problem is not external. It's not a lack of opportunity. It's not a lack of ability. It's how you're distributing your attention. And that needs to change. In the next part, you'll learn exactly how to identify, with clarity, what your one thing truly is. And more importantly, how to eliminate everything else without guilt. Because knowing what to do is only half the game. Knowing what to ignore is what actually transforms your life. How to identify your one thing and eliminate the rest. Up to this point, you understand the problem. Now it's time to solve it. Because knowing that focus matters doesn't change your life. What changes your life is knowing exactly where to place that focus. And this is where most people get stuck. Because when you look at your life, everything feels important. Everything feels urgent. Everything feels necessary. But it isn't. And if you don't learn how to separate what's essential from what's irrelevant, you'll stay stuck in this cycle forever. So let's simplify. There is a process. Direct, practical, and brutally honest. First step, stop looking at tasks and start looking at results. Most people organize their day based on what they need to do. But high performers organize their life based on what they need to achieve. And that changes everything. Because tasks are endless, but results are specific. So the question is not, what do I need to do today? The real question is, what is the most important result I need to create right now? And from that result, you filter everything else. Second step, reduce until it feels uncomfortable. When you list your priorities, your instinct will be to include several. But that's not priority. That's a list. Real priority is one. So you have to cut, eliminate, remove, simplify, until only what truly moves your life remains. And yes, this will feel uncomfortable, because you'll have to let go of things that seem good in order to focus on what is essential. But that's the price of clarity. Third step, test your one thing. There's a simple filter. If you do this every day, for long enough, does it have the potential to change your life? If the answer is no, it's not your one thing. If the answer is yes, you've found it. Fourth step, organize your life around it. And this is where everything separates. Because identifying is easy, protecting is hard. You need to build structure, block time, eliminate distractions, reduce decisions. You need to treat your one thing as an absolute priority, not as just another task on your list, but as the central axis of your life. Because without protection, the world will pull your attention back, and you'll fall into your old patterns again. Fifth step, eliminate the rest without guilt. This is critical, because one of the biggest reasons people don't focus is guilt. Guilt for not responding to everything. Guilt for not doing everything. Guilt for saying no. But you need to understand this. Everything that doesn't contribute to your one thing is pulling you away from the life you want. It's not neutral. It's negative. So eliminating is not losing. Eliminating is advancing. And when you start operating this way, something shifts deeply. Your mind slows down. Your clarity increases. Your decisions become faster. And for the first time, you feel in control for real. Not because you're doing everything, but because you're doing what matters. And that is rare, but there's still a critical point. Even knowing all of this, even having clarity, most people still fail, not because of strategy, but because of false beliefs that silently sabotage their focus. In the next part, you'll see what those lies are and how they're quietly destroying your progress. The lies that are destroying your focus, you already know what you need to do. And yet, something keeps pulling you in the opposite direction. And that something is not a lack of discipline. It's beliefs, ideas you've accepted as truth, that are quietly sabotaging your focus. And the problem is, these beliefs are invisible. They feel right. They sound smart. They even seem necessary. But they're exactly what's keeping you stuck. The first lie is, everything is important. If everything is important, nothing is. When you try to give the same level of attention to everything, you dilute your impact. You divide yourself. And a divided mind never produces extraordinary results. The second lie is, multitasking works. It doesn't. What you call multitasking is just rapid task switching. And every switch has a cost. You lose depth. You lose quality. You lose time. And in the end, you do more with less real result. The third lie is, discipline means doing everything through willpower. It doesn't. Willpower is limited. You are not designed to rely on it all the time. High achievers don't depend on willpower. They build systems, environments, routines, structures that make focus inevitable. The fourth lie is, I need to be balanced all the time. It sounds right, but it's not real. Great results require strategic imbalance. There are seasons where you need to concentrate more energy in one area, and that's okay, because constant balance is the enemy of accelerated progress. But there's an even deeper lie, maybe the most dangerous of all. I have time. You believe you can do it later, that you can keep dividing your attention, and one day you'll get organized, but that day never comes. Because until you change the way you make decisions, your time keeps getting consumed by things that don't matter, and before you realize it, years have passed. A lot of effort, very little result. All because of small decisions repeated every day. But here's the good news. Beliefs can be replaced, and the moment you start to see these lies, they begin to lose their power, because focus is not just a skill, it's a choice. A choice you have to make every single day, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it feels like you're losing something. Because in reality, you're gaining direction, and direction is what turns effort into results. In the next part, you'll learn how to take everything you've seen so far and turn it into a simple system that you can execute every single day. The simple system to live with focus every day. Understanding all of this is powerful, but it's not enough. Because without a system, you fall back into your old patterns. You feel motivated today, but tomorrow you're divided again. That's why what you need is not more information. It's structure. Something simple enough to repeat every day, but strong enough to change your life. And this system starts with a decision. You will no longer start your day reacting. You will start your day directing. First step, define your one thing before your day begins, not during the chaos, not in the middle of notifications, not when the world is already pulling your attention. Before everything, ask yourself, what is the one thing that, if I do it today, truly moves my life forward? And be honest, because many times, the answer won't be comfortable. Second step, block time for it. Don't leave it for when you have time. You won't. If you don't protect it, it won't happen. So you need to treat your one thing as a non-negotiable commitment. A defined time. No interruptions. No distractions. This is your growth space. Third step, eliminate what competes with it. And here's where most people fail. They try to add focus. Without removing distraction, that doesn't work. You need to reduce stimulation. Fewer notifications. Fewer interruptions. Fewer unnecessary decisions. Because focus is not just about choosing what to do. It's about protecting your mind from what doesn't matter. Fourth step, execute, even without motivation. This is critical because you won't always feel motivated. You won't always feel inspired, but consistency doesn't depend on emotion. It depends on decision. You do it because it's your one thing. That's it. Fifth step, repeat until it becomes a pattern. At first, it feels like effort. Then it becomes a habit. And over time, it becomes your identity. You stop being someone who tries to focus and become someone who lives with direction. And that changes everything. Because when you have a system, you no longer depend on motivation. You don't depend on high energy. You don't depend on the perfect moment. You simply execute. And that's what creates real results. But there's one final point. Because living with focus is not just about productivity. It's about who you become. In the next part, you'll understand the final transformation. What truly changes when you stop trying to do everything and start doing what actually matters. From busy to effective, the real transformation, there is a silent difference that completely changes the direction of your life. The difference between being busy and being effective. And at first, those two look the same. Both people work hard. Both have full schedules. Both seem disciplined. But over time, their results start to separate. One keeps running, but never moves forward. The other moves ahead, with clarity, with direction, with real results. And this doesn't happen by accident. The busy person lives in reaction, reacting to messages, to demands, to problems, to urgency. They don't decide what to do. They respond to whatever shows up. And because of that, their life never gets in order. Because when you're always reacting, you're never in control. The effective person lives differently. They decide in advance. They define what matters. They protect what is essential. They build their day around their one thing. And because of that, they move forward, even while doing fewer things. Because it's not about quantity, it's about impact. The busy person measures their day by effort. The effective person measures their day by results. The busy person ends the day exhausted. The effective person ends the day with progress. And repeated over time. This creates two completely different lives. One filled with constant effort, but no real growth. And one built on clear direction, with inevitable results. But the most important transformation is not external. It's internal. When you stop trying to do everything, something shifts in your mind. The noise begins to fade. the anxiety decreases. The confusion starts to disappear, and in its place, something rare appears: clarity. You begin to see things more precisely. You make decisions faster. You feel less mental weight. And for the first time, you're not just busy, you're in control. And that changes the way you live. Because you're no longer driven by what shows up. You're driven by what you choose. And that is power. But here's the final point. This transformation doesn't happen in a single moment. It happens through small decisions. Every single day. Decisions no one sees. Decisions that seem simple, but over time, they completely rebuild your life. And now, everything comes down to one choice. Stay where you are, or change the way you live starting today. In the next part, we'll bring this to a clear and powerful close. The environment that defines your focus or destroys IT. You can have clarity, you can have intention. You might even know exactly what your one thing is. But if your environment is wrong, you will fail. Because focus is not just mental, it's structural. Your environment is constantly shaping your decisions, even when you don't realize it. If your phone is always within reach, you'll check it. If notifications are turned on, you'll get interrupted. If everything is accessible, everything will compete for your attention. And that's why so many people lose focus. Even when they want to focus, they try to fight their environment using willpower, and that doesn't work. Because your environment always wins. In the long run, high achievers understand this. They don't rely only on discipline. They design their environment. They remove distractions. They simplify choices. They reduce stimulation. They create a space where focus is natural and distraction is difficult. Think about it. It's much easier to avoid a mistake than to resist it all the time. So if you truly want to change your life, start with what's around you. Organize your space. Remove what distracts you. Make visible what reminds you of your one thing. Because in the end, you don't live only based on conscious decisions. You live based on the environment you accept. And as long as your environment keeps pulling you toward distraction, your focus will always be unstable. But when you align your environment with your goal, everything changes. Because now, the world starts working in your favor. Focus is not what you do. IT's who you become. There is a deeper level that most people never reach. They try to focus. They try to be disciplined. They try to be more productive. But they keep failing because they're still operating from the same identity. They still see themselves as someone who is distracted, someone who starts but doesn't finish, someone who depends on motivation. And as long as that identity doesn't change, the behavior will never last, because you always act in alignment with who you believe you are. So here's the real shift. You need to stop thinking about focus as something you do, and start seeing it as something you are. You're not trying to focus. You are someone who protects focus. You're not trying to be disciplined. You are someone who executes what needs to be done. And that changes everything. Because when your identity shifts, your decisions align. You don't negotiate. You don't debate with yourself. You simply act. And this doesn't happen overnight. It is built through repetition, through consistency, through small daily proof. Every time you choose your one thing, you reinforce that identity. Every time you eliminate a distraction, you strengthen that version of yourself. And over time, it stops feeling like effort and becomes a pattern. And when it becomes a pattern, it becomes power. Because now you no longer depend on willpower. You depend on who you've become. And people who live this way don't go back, because they no longer have to fight themselves. They've already decided who they are. And that is the highest level of focus. One decision changes everything at this point. You already know. You know what's been holding you back. You know why you feel busy, but not moving forward. You know that trying to do everything is the reason nothing truly changes. So now, this is no longer about understanding. It's about decision, because nothing in your life changes until you choose differently. You can keep living the same way, waking up, reacting, filling your day with tasks, telling yourself you're being productive, and repeating the same cycle again tomorrow. Or you can choose a different path, a path where you stop dividing your energy, where you stop chasing everything, where you stop negotiating with distractions, and start building something real, with focus, with direction, with consistency. Because in the end, success is not complicated. It's built on one thing done well over time. But most people will never experience this, not because they can't, but because they won't choose it. They will stay comfortable. They will stay distracted. They will stay busy. So the real question is not what you've learned. The real question is, are you willing to let go of what doesn't matter to finally build what does? Because that is the price, and that is the opportunity, and that decision is in front of you right now, not tomorrow, not next week. Now, choose your one thing, protect it, commit to it, and build your life around it. Because if you don't, nothing changes. But if you do, everything starts to. The cost of not choosing and the power of choosing now. There are two versions of your life, and both are being built right now. The first one is the life you already know. You wake up, you check your phone, you react, you handle whatever shows up. You stay busy. You stay tired. You tell yourself you're doing your best. But deep down, you know something isn't moving. Weeks pass, months pass, years pass, and everything looks active. But nothing really changes. That's the cost of not choosing. Not failing, not losing, but slowly drifting in a life that never becomes what it could have been. Now there's a second version, a quieter one, a more intentional one. You wake up, and before the world pulls you, you decide. You know exactly what matters. You protect it. You execute it. You repeat it, day after day. And in the beginning, it doesn't look impressive. It looks simple, almost invisible. But over time, something starts to shift. Your mind becomes clearer. Your results start to compound. Your confidence begins to grow. And one day, you look back and realize your life is no longer the same. Not because of luck, not because of talent, but because you chose direction when most people chose distraction. And that's the difference. Not intelligence, not opportunity, choice. And right now, both versions are still possible for you. But not for long, because every day you delay this decision, you reinforce the old pattern. And every day you choose focus. You build a new life. So this is the moment. Not dramatic, not loud, but decisive. Who are you going to be from this point forward? Time, ice, and passing. It's being invested, or wasted. You don't lose your life all at once. You lose it in fragments, in small decisions that feel harmless. Scrolling for a few minutes, saying yes to something irrelevant, postponing what actually matters. Nothing feels big. Nothing feels decisive. But everything counts, because while you're trying to do everything, your time is being consumed. And time doesn't negotiate. It doesn't wait for you to get organized. It doesn't slow down so you can figure things out. It doesn't come back once you realize it's gone. It just keeps moving. And every single day, it's either being invested or wasted. And here's what most people don't realize. It's not the big mistake that destroys your progress. It's the small distractions, repeated every single day, because they seem harmless. But they steal the one thing that actually builds results, consistency in the right direction. And without that, nothing holds. You can have talent. You can have potential. You can even have good ideas, but without direction, everything fades. And that's why so many people look back and ask themselves, how did time go by so fast? Because it wasn't time that passed. It was focus that was never chosen. And now you have an advantage. You're aware of it. You can see the pattern. You understand the cost. But awareness without action changes nothing. So the final question is not about time. It's about decision. From this point forward, will your time continue to be consumed? Or will it finally be directed? Because in the end, what builds your life is not the years. It's the choices you repeat inside them. And that choice starts now. If this message spoke to you, don't ignore it. Comment below. I choose focus over distraction. That's your first decision. Subscribe to the channel. Because here, you learn principles that change how you think and how you live. And share this with someone who is doing everything, but going nowhere. Because sometimes one decision is all it takes to change everything.